GPT. Give me some better ideas.
Give it a better prompt.
Oh. You hate to see it.
We don't tolerate AI abuse at my company. It's always user error.
We could just do a whole episode of montages.
That's fine. Just be us recording for like 2 minutes. Like, hey, welcome to Boys. This is episode 200. Enjoy this.
All right, let's do this.
Aw, poor dad.
3, 2, 1. Hello, welcome to Showboys. Nick and I, we're back. Demon Slayer season 4 just ended. Chad and Brady's takeover of Showboys has come to an end. I tuned into the premiere of the season 4 finale today when it, premiered on YouTube, and I gotta say, quite impressed with little Brady.
Young star.
He's a natural.
Better than Chad.
I mean, I wasn't gonna say it, but since you brought it up, hard to argue. It's hard to argue.
Dang.
But yeah, though. Man, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Tired.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go to bed.
You're actually just gonna go sit in the recliner.
Yeah.
Kick back and fall asleep while I talk about Wyatt Earp and Tombstone.
I'll just chime in for the Doc Holliday one-liners and then nod right back out.
I like it.
So let the tuberculosis take over.
Yeah, you lunger.
You lunger.
Enjoy your break though.
Yeah, it's a good break. Yeah. Still stay busy, but yeah, it was good. Good having a little season off.
Mm-hmm.
But we're back for what? Like a few weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks of traditional, good old traditional Showboys.
Yep. And then we have, it'll be a little bit before you and I get another break because we have, after this month of October, basically, of traditional Showboys episodes, we have our Arcane Season 2 season starting. It's going to be super fun. We actually have a guest co-host for that, Venom from our Discord. So if you're in Discord and you've probably seen Venom because he's very active in there. Oh wow, our cameras are changing. Excited about that. Big League of Legends fan. He also enjoyed season 1 of Arcane. He's going to come in and join us, and 1 podcast episode per Arcane episode. I know they're releasing it in 3 acts like they did season 1 of 3 episodes each, so the podcast will be kind of lagged behind the release of each episode because I think that all 3 acts are released within like a week or 2.
Once a week for like 3 weeks is how they did it.
Okay. So that's 9 episodes in 3 weeks. We're not going to be doing that for the podcast, but we will have 1 episode per episode of the show. We're also going to do a cool giveaway leading up to Arcane Season 2. So if you're interested, we're going to give away at least 1, maybe 2 of the Steel Tin Blu-ray copies of season 1. They have a really cool blue one with Jinx on the cover. They have a really cool red one with Vi on the cover. If you're interested in picking up one of those in our giveaway, subscribe and make sure you tune into the Arcane Season 2 episodes. Leave some comments. Let us know that you're there for the giveaway. And in the finale of season 2, we will give away the season 1 Blu-ray, or maybe we'll do it in the season premiere. I don't know yet. We need to discuss that. But yeah, subscribe and check out Arcane when it comes up, and you could win cool collector's edition Blu-ray. Well, I shouldn't say collector's edition because there's some wild collector's editions out there that are like $1 billion.
Whoa.
We're going to need some more patrons before we can start affording giveaways like that. But yeah, look forward to that. Yeah, man, you ready to talk about some Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy War?
Wyatt Earp.
And maybe I shouldn't even say maybe. I think hands down the greatest Western movie of all time.
Yeah,
Tombstone.
for sure.
You
Dibs.
ready to dig into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So you actually told me about Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy War. And also Chad was supposed to be with us tonight, but he got like called into work. So big
OT,
shame.
man.
He was very excited to be talking about this. So next week in episode 200, shout out, special episode coming next week. Yeah, next week when he's on, we'll just give him like 10 minutes. Be like, Chad, tell us everything that you wanted to say about Wyatt Earp and Tombstone.
He's on a Red Dead kick, and I think
Yeah.
I opened Netflix one day, and it was like, my Netflix is awesome. My wife isn't. It's just it's so night and day. Like when you open hers, like literally much brighter, all very reality TV, like Selling Sunset, all that nonsense. But it's like much brighter,
Yeah.
I feel like they make better use of like 4K and like the colors and on the TV, whereas like mine is just very dark and like it looks like this background most of the time. It's like barely in color half the time because I have like World War II stuff on there.
Yeah.
So it's mine's very much darker, but this was on there and I was like, oh, cool, because it's Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy War, and it's one of our favorite kind of like period piece, dramatic but docu-series. I don't know what like the whole like string of words should be for these things. I change it depending on who I'm talking to, just so they understand like it's a drama-mentary. Docu-series is the one that I find that just comes to the top of the head most of the time. Series, drama, acted.
Yeah, what'd you say?
A drama-mentary, something like that. Drama-mentary.
I like that.
Something to describe these, because these definitely have past 5 years. Like this is basically how people have been making documentaries. Because I also watch like an Alexander the Great one on Netflix. Netflix is just good for these things. Like over the summer, it's about Alexander the Great. It was more documentary like because they actually had like historians and stuff, like the classic like interview thing, but they still spent most of their time like legit like acting scenes out and like decent acting and good settings. So it's a nice trend I like to see, where we get a little bit more flair in these documentaries. I think they realize like people don't want to sit around and watch historians talk all the time. I don't mind it, but it works.
Yeah, I like the blend of the two for sure, and I think Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy War has a good balance of the two. Yeah, I don't think it's too heavy on either side of that. I did like the historians or people that were being interviewed about it. Oh man, they just were all just hokey cowboy.
Yeah.
Love it. Dudes.
They were so happy to be there.
Yeah, man.
That's the other fun thing too, because like it's just like the Ancient Aliens guy. Like these people are just like excited to be on camera, and someone asking them these questions like, "Oh yeah, I'll tell you all about it."
I've literally been waiting for this my entire life. Yeah, no, it was really good, and I think like most of the time, if you recommend something like this to me, I'm gonna be interested immediately. Especially like my entire year has just been watching like historical stuff. Like
you're
obviously
like firmly between 1850 and 1950 all year. Like that's your 100-year period this year.
Yeah. But it's been good. So this first off, it checked that box immediately. It's like right in that whole rabbit hole I've been like just absolutely plummeting down with no end in sight.
I can't wait for you to get big into the Revolutionary War and like independent, like all of that. You're gonna be in the 1700s real soon.
You mentioned that, but Fat Electrician had a pretty good video the other day about somebody from the Revolutionary War. And it was awesome.
He had someone from the Revolutionary War on the podcast.
Yeah, dude, it was great.
Whoa.
Yeah.
AI reincarnation.
But yeah, no. So that was awesome. I was immediately interested. I have a deep love for Tombstone, so of course, like, oh, Wyatt Earp, yeah, checked another box right there. And it was just really cool watching this, and really getting to learn the actual history behind, you know, the story of Tombstone, which is, I wouldn't say loosely, but I wouldn't say like hyper accurately based on the shootout at the OK Corral and Wyatt Earp and his, well, war against the Cowboys. So that was really cool to dive into and actually learn what actually happened. But also, what I found super interesting was the larger, like, global implications that this tiny little spat in this
Yeah.
really tiny little pop-up mining town in Arizona actually like caused. Um, so yeah, I don't know, like what were your
I
thoughts?
no, I definitely I loved it. It was great. And I honestly they did a really good job too, like ending each episode with like not a cliffhanger, but like you definitely wanted more and like wanted to
Mhm.
keep going because the story is intriguing. And I love how they focus on the fact that it was like a national news sensation and like the crisscross roads of like reemerging like the North versus South, which was all but like 20, 30 years ago when they had the Civil
Yeah.
War. Um, and I thought it was cool how they did note like people were following this in the newspaper like week to week, day to day, like what's the latest on like this ridiculousness that is
Yeah.
happening out here in Tombstone in Arizona. So I thought that was really cool. But then it's like with all of the show kind of like in my mind and like my understanding of the context and the historical importance of it kind of like recalibrated. Then watching Tombstone, it actually makes me like Tombstone even more, right? If that's possible. Because Tombstone as a movie is completely like a Hollywood take on it, right? They did
Oh
a
yeah.
lot to doctor up it all about, Wyatt being a very altruistic, like pure good character.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing though in this case. And like the embellishments that they did do weren't like bad. They were all kind of net positive to make a better movie.
Mhm.
Um, because the things that they did kind of glance over, you can still see like why certain scenes were in Tombstone now
Mhm.
because they were at least like nodding and noting like toward the end when the Cowboys stopped the carriage of the stagecoach, right? They never really showed them holding up stagecoaches, but that was a big thing
Mhm.
in what started all of this. But that was
Yeah.
just like a tip of the hat to like the historical context. Then
Yeah.
like
And I
Behan,
think that was even how wasn't that how Ike kind of met his, like, final demise
yeah.
too? Yeah,
And the
so
Tombstone, they know like it was like a is a robbery of some sort gone
yeah.
wrong. He got capped, but it's just like what otherwise seem as just like random scenes like pushing the story along in Tombstone. A lot of them have like nods to like what's actually happening. They just don't go into detail of what's happening because it's all about Wyatt and this touristic war against the Cowboys. So I like
Yeah.
how they kept the focus very straightforward, but there's still plenty of scenes in there that point toward the actual events. And I thought that was really cool to still
A
do.
f a few that may come to mind if you're not, like, super familiar or haven't, given Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy War a watch. Um, the whole love interest with Josephine in the
Very cleaned up.
movie, you have, this actress comes into town, catches Wyatt's eye, but she somehow, like, is in a relationship with Behan, even though they, like, never said anything to each other in the movie at
Well,
all.
yeah, there's definitely
Um,
some time, like
yeah,
time goes by and they kind of
yeah.
glance over that in the movie.
But, like, at first glance, not knowing the backstory, maybe you might just be like, "Oh, okay, why do they have this random, like, love story in here?" Well, that was actually, like, a very important piece of the Wyatt Earp story, in
But I
actual
feel
history. Josephine was dating Sheriff Behan. In real life, I mean, Behan was kind of a scumbag and was, having an affair with somebody else, so he was unfaithful to Josephine, but she was also unfaithful to him, as she was kind of having an affair with Wyatt. And then when
That
that
was
got
the most like changed thing, was that whole
yeah.
dynamic.
I also
Out of
love how in the
everything.
movie they made Wyatt's wife just like this opium, like a
Dope.
riddled,
Just dope
like,
fiend. Though they did note at the end that she did die like months later from a drug overdose.
mm,
So she was.
wow, yes, they left that part out of the docu-series.
Yes.
But yeah, so just small details to just add on to what you're saying. Like the whole love interest of Tombstone, like was actually a very vital role, um, which led to the real life history. When Behan found out about that, like he was no longer Team Wyatt and like had a vendetta of his own against Wyatt, and kind of like flipped sides to the Cowboys side and caused he was a major thorn in the side of Wyatt, much like we saw in the movie when he throws him in jail and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you make the movie does a lot to not put Kurt Russell, Wyatt, in any negative light. So I wonder, and like your question about, did any Cowboys actually flip and become
Mhm.
part of his posse to hunt them down? I wonder if that was just, some of this was all just maybe like more rumors that are a little less like quantified than what was in the docu-series. But I do wonder if like, did they add that to make the Cowboys seem worse, that their own people left them, joined Wyatt? Did they kind of add the part about her being like a dope fiend to lessen the blow that Wyatt was more interested in Josephine, or the actress, right? So it's like, what
Yeah.
portions of these were like, because all the big changes all just help Wyatt be just a more perfect,
Yeah, they're like,
true
well, I
good.
mean, can you blame him?
Yeah, right.
His wife was just like strung out all the
He just walks
time,
in, he's
just
like, you need to get off that stuff. You're
slamming opium.
yeah.
I just have little headaches, okay? Just a
No,
headache.
it's just a headache. That happened.
Oh man, but yeah,
Crushing
dude,
bottles.
I haven't rewatched Tombstone in quite some years.
Please do.
So that was obviously amazing to revisit. But as I'm watching it, I'm noticing all these actors. I'm like, I did not realize he was in this movie. Billy Bob Thornton did not realize he was in this movie. He was a little more plump back then,
Yeah.
but um, and oh shoot, I'm trying. Oh, Michael Rooker. He was one of the cowboys who flipped. I think he ends up being the
Oh
one who
yeah.
gets drugged behind the
Yeah.
horse towards the end.
He's super familiar, but have no idea like what else he is in. But like,
You would know him
yeah.
from Guardians of the Galaxy. He's
Oh
Yondu or
yeah,
whatever.
dude.
He's also in The Walking Dead for a little bit.
Much younger too, like 20 years, 30 years ago, 1995.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. But like, dude, Val Kilmer just absolutely destroys his role. Like he is so good in this movie.
I mean, easily one of the top 5 cinema characters for me. Like Doc Holliday is just
Oh
top
yeah.
notch one-liners,
Oh yeah. And
best of the
they
best.
while in real life Doc was pretty rowdy like dude, they definitely embellished him in this movie. Um yeah, man, what a character. It's cool to learn like why he's called Doc Holliday.
Yep.
It's a
Actual doctor,
dentist. He's
actual
a
dentist
yeah.
doctor. Yeah. Cursed
Um
with being a lunger.
yes, the
Went to
old
where it was
tuberculosis.
dry. Yeah.
Yep.
Off the
Prescribed whiskey.
convenient
That's what they
way
told
to
him to do back then.
yeah. That's why whiskey and bourbon is a lot of times they're made to look like medicine bottles, but really big,
Oh,
to pay homage to that.
I did not know that. That's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, so how do you want to approach this? Do you want to go through because last night as I was finishing my watch of Tombstone and like we were chatting each other, I'm like, this episode could totally and probably most likely will just turn into us going hard on Tombstone and using Wyatt Earp in the Cowboy War as like a
Correct.
metric of
Yeah.
sorts to like be like, well, how accurate was it, or like whatever? Or do you want to go through some of the more like deeper historical implications of the Wyatt Earp vendetta, and then of course add in bits and pieces from Tombstone as we go through?
Yeah, I think we should focus on the Netflix series and then, you know, tip our hat to Tombstone
Yeah.
when convenient.
Uh, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. First off, I didn't realize that this was, so close to the Civil War. Like, for some reason, this is going to sound really dumb, but that shouldn't come to a surprise that I say stuff that sounds really dumb.
Derp,
But
derp.
sometimes I have a hard time, like, relating a year with, like, how society was in that time period, if that makes sense at all. Like, I see late 1800s. Okay, so in my job, I run title for oil and gas companies. So a lot of times I'm looking at old deeds and stuff from like the late 1800s, early 1900s. And I'll like be reading through these deeds, or in this case, watching this docu-series, and I'm like, man, it's hard to envision what, like, how advanced, technologically or whatever society was back then. Because like I'll be like, oh, I can't believe we were drilling for oil and gas in like 1890. But then like you see clips of what the East Coast looked like then compared to Tombstone. It's like, oh well, yeah, of course we were drilling for oil and gas. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't
Stuff
that
is,
long ago.
yeah.
But like I mean, but it was like a very long time ago.
Yeah. I
um,
mean, 150, 170 years these days.
yeah. But I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me is just how like new the West was compared
Yeah.
to how established the East Coast had been by the time they started venturing out. I mean, it
It's
was just
crazy
it's
because,
just a wild frontier, untamed.
yeah, in the Wild West, I mean, really, it was those 50 years, right? Or so, like between the Civil War, after the Civil War, and before the turn of the century. It's kind of like that
Mhm.
generation, which is crazy because a lot of that generation, like, had influence in early Hollywood. That's why Westerns were such a big thing. That's why, um, like, Japanese were obsessed with Westerns. Like, a lot of different parts of the world were just obsessed with, like, Hollywood and the Westerns that we made in the early 1900s. Um, so it is crazy because it was not really that long ago, but at this point, it is becoming a very fleeting period of time. Whereas like our parents grew up, and like it really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah,
They grew up with a lot of those people still kind of alive. That was kind of like their World War II a little bit in some sense. For us, like they saw like the waning days of that generation of the Wild West,
yeah,
the end of it at least, and like we kind of we're the last generation to see the waning days of the World War II generation. But yeah, it totally wasn't that long ago. And then you're looking at maps and reading deeds from the same period of time.
yeah.
It just wasn't
Whoa,
wild.
this is
It
going
just
on. It's
wasn't wild
crazy.
Ohio, rural Ohio, a little different.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as rowdy. But yeah, what do you think of the whole like J.P. Morgan
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go
railroads, like
next.
the Wells Fargo stuff?
I like how, and I think that's what intrigued me, like right off the jump is, and like this is just like I just love the additional context because that's so important to every like story.
Hmm.
Um, is just like the context of like the world at the time. And I like how this starts like there. And like the first episode, Trouble in Tombstone. Well, the trouble in Tombstone isn't necessarily the Cowboys versus Wyatt Earp quite yet.
Okay.
Um, it's it's these stagecoach robberies. But why are there so many stagecoaches? Coaches? Because they're mining silver, and
like a ton of silver.
ton of silver in Tombstone, right? So that's like cool. We found that, but it's also like the banks are kind of saying we owe Europe a lot of money for the war we had like 20, 30 years ago called, the Civil War. They almost ripped this place apart. We need to pay back those loans. And to do that, we
Mhm.
have to move silver physically from here. Can't just like send a Venmo payment. You got to move it from Arizona to like
Yeah.
literally New York and put that crap on a boat and ship it over.
Yeah,
Like wire transfer.
hadn't quite pumped out the first few Brinks trucks yet.
Right. And honestly, that's those are good marks for bandits and cowboys
Mhm.
and that gang. But it's also cool that they instantly talk about like JP Morgan isn't even here. He's over in Europe trying to convince Europeans that America is a safe place to invest.
And invest why? Because what does he wanna do?
He
What
want
would make delivering the silver much safer and quicker across the country?
I think they noted that the railroads were kind of like in a crappy state of affairs, and his plan was like, well, let's buy something bad and buy all of it and then just
Yeah,
monopolize it. That
yeah.
seems like a good business strategy. Before it was illegal. So that was totally what he wanted to do. He wanted to buy up all the railroads in the United States and make it way more efficient for all the right reasons on top of
Mhm.
getting ridiculously wealthy. So that was his goal, but he needed money and he needed Europeans to be like, it's safe,
Yeah.
it's fine, psych.
It's, nice to put a face to my bank's name.
Right? This is the man,
Yep.
Mr. JP Morgan himself.
Yeah. And it was funny to see, like, Wells Fargo having a building Tombstone.
Yeah, dude. Young
Yeah,
fledgling bank there out
yeah,
on the frontier. Good old Wells Fargo. They got
yeah.
rid of my mortgage and gave it to Cooper or whatever now.
Oh, yeah.
So
You get on that cross-country mortgage. Shout out. I wish we were sponsored. Cliff, what are you doing, man?
boom,
Sponsor the podcast.
boom.
Um, yeah, no, that stuff is super fascinating, and, like, that's just another aspect of the West that is just mind-blowing, but makes 1000% sense. Like, we're just gonna rob the stagecoaches of all of the
Duh,
silver and money they have. Well,
duh.
like, how could they do that? Well, because there's nothing else out there. Who's gonna stop them?
Right.
We're not, like, in a big metropolis with, like, law enforcement. Like, law enforcement is one they had the sheriff and the deputy. They had two people. Like, how are you gonna patrol the massive road between Tombstone and wherever the stagecoach has to go? Like, you can't. Like, it's literally open for the pickings. Like, it's
Yeah, and you think about like the logistics or like the career path of like law enforcement back then, like, you go to be a cop, which you probably just walk down to local like precinct and like sign up. But at some point, like, I don't know, you're like, I want to go be a marshal or a deputy in like a western town, right? Like they came from somewhere else and then like pick someone to be the sheriff, local or something like that. So it's just like the like very loose logistics of law enforcement of the time, right? And then it's already that extended, and then we're talking about, like you said, like one person that's like anointed from somewhere a little bit more civilized, then they're just kind of picking deputies from there. It's like
yeah.
either their son or like their cousin or just the local guy that doesn't drink as much as everyone else.
Yeah. So we kind of covered the reason for the establishment of Tombstone, like tons of silver, big mines out there. So
Yeah.
of course this town would pop up as people go there to hit the mines, get rich. The interesting thing about Tombstone is it wasn't just like a mining town; like it was a thriving, like
They're
up
trying to
and
be
coming
civilized.
town. Like a lot of money flowing in and out. So the people were uh what did they call it? Like Paris something or other? I forget what the exact reference was, but they had nice clothes. Like there were saloons. Like there was a lot of money flowing in and out. So that kind of makes it unique in its own right. But
and a tie in Tombstone to that though is like when I was watching Tombstone, when it starts, I was like, oh, okay, this makes like a lot more sense. Like what this is about is Wyatt and his brothers, granted different from the documentary here, but Wyatt and his brothers in Tombstone, they come there to get rich off of the buzz, and they kind of make them seem a little bit like, entrepreneurs, a little bit like hustlers, where they pick the rundown, beat up saloon, give us some law and order, and start dealing like gambling and stuff there. So like, they come here to get rich, but like that's noted that a lot of that was going on. Granted, I don't think from how the show portrays why they're there, right, doesn't match that, but they kind of represent that attitude. And then obviously Behan's girlfriend kind of represents the more like sophisticated,
aristocratic,
we have shows, we have actors, like we're trying to be more, we're attracting these people. But it is interesting, those adjustments there.
And then we covered the transit of money, why the silver was so important, where the government's using this massive plethora of silver to pay off their debt from the Civil War to Europe, right? And what do we need for safe transportation? Well, better railways. So that's where JP Morgan comes in. Now, the reason for needing safer transportation, this is where the Cowboys come in, because they are responsible for holding up a lot of these stagecoach transportations, robbing them, killing the drivers and whatnot. But another funny aspect that we learned in the docu-series is the Cowboys' other avenue of business, and that is stealing cattle and selling beef on the black market.
Like riding into Mexico, stealing Mexican like cows, and then like ponying them up here to like sell. Granted, now that's a little bit, I've learned that from when I worked at PLM and you go down to Fort Worth.
Oh, really?
That's a big thing about Fort Worth is they have like the cattle drives and stuff like that. But Cowboys would take, maybe not legitly like these cowboys, like the gang, but like the wider term cowboys, they would bring cattle there to sell in Fort Worth, like in the big city. So that's like part of that ecosystem of culture down there. Granted, some of them were probably dirty cows and they were stolen from people. Dirty cows, dirty money, dirty beef.
Their cows.
Launder these cows.
Dude, okay, you joke, but I did just watch
I was going to tell me you read a deed where it was like...
No, that would be awesome, but no. I did watch a docu-series on Apple, not about cattle, but about the cartels getting into horse racing to launder money by buying like horses super cheap or super expensive with their dirty money.
It's kind of what Peaky Blinders does later in the season.
Yeah,
they get in the
I think it's called. Let me look on my list real quick. It was pretty good. It was short.
Yeah.
Not here to talk about that, obviously, but I just thought it was funny that you brought that up. Cowboy Cartel. So even a similar name, but yeah. So this gang we have here in the Tombstone area, led by Ike Clanton, called the Cowboys. Like they were called the Cowboys because they were stealing cows. Like
Cowboys.
Come on. But yeah, so that's kind of who the JP Morgan and the Wells Fargos are kind of wanting to protect the silver from, because not only are they stealing cows, but they're also holding up these stagecoach deliveries and taking that. And that's where Sheriff Behan, I forget his deputy's name, but then you have the Earps as the deputy marshals in Tombstone. That's kind of where they come into play.
Which is interesting because, in the movie they were kind of like at least, yeah, they're like retired law enforcement. They're trying to just get out and make some money, but they end up getting pulled back into it because that's just what they do. Whereas actually, it appears, according to this docu-series, is that they were actually deputy marshals on duty in Tombstone. And they also explain the dynamic, though. Behan and Ike are much bigger characters in the series here, in the actual story, the history of it, than they are in the movie, um, wide and far. Because Behan, being the sheriff, he kind of balances this tightrope, this
Yeah.
duality of Tombstone, where you have the fancy folk, the business folk, the sophisticated folk from the civilized world coming in, trying to make some money and not live completely honestly, but they're trying not to be cowboys. Because on the other side, we have cowboys who are a little bit more lawless,
Hmm.
but still generate a lot of money
And also
from people.
not completely lawless. Like
Right?
this is just a very, very Western mob situation.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of, yes, they're the local mob.
Yeah.
So but like Behan being the sheriff, like he like walks this line between, he's kind of like literally their friend in the movie.
Hmm.
Whereas like in the show, like he isn't at first, because he does realize like they are problematic,
Yeah.
but then the whole affair thing kind of sets in and like
Yeah.
flips them. And they go a lot into, and this, I mean, obviously this a little later, but like literally the sway of public opinion. I thought that was really fascinating
Oh,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so I while you're talking, it looks like Wyatt was a constable in Missouri and then resumed his law enforcement in Wichita, Kansas. Um, Became a policeman in Dodge City, which I think they reference in the movie. Um, and in Dodge City is where he actually met and became friends with Doc Holliday. With that whole situation where Doc Holliday actually literally saves Wyatt Earp's life. And that's kind of how that relationship started. But yeah, so he was in law before coming to Tombstone, much
yep.
like they played up in the movie. But did they say in the series that like he was just always in law in Tombstone? Because they in the movie, he's reluctant, doesn't want to do it, but then
Yeah.
eventually does.
And it's actually his brother that's like the righteous one that
Yeah,
wants to do it.
Verge.
So I think, thinking about it, I think both the movie and the show kind of expedite through certain like periods of time. So I would like to think that it may still be true that the Earps came to Tombstone for the same reason they did in the movie, right? They like left their prior lives and they're trying to make a new life here.
Mhm.
So probably the cowboy situation might have already been an issue in Tombstone, and they might have became deputized to help deal with
Mm,
just the growing town and problems, right?
yeah,
I feel like in the movie, it's just in their nature. So maybe for the same reason, but before like the series starts, that had already happened, perhaps. Um, so I think both of those can be true.
yeah,
I think the movie can still be true. We
yeah,
just pick up a little later after that,
yeah.
more or less.
Um, but yeah, so like you're saying, Cowboys really just like an organized crime syndicate here, and kind of working hand in hand with Behan. He's kind of turning, his head here and there, letting him do certain things, but uh, you know, every once in a while has to slap him on the wrist here and there. But yeah, another one of the big differences from the movie and the show is Ike Clanton himself, who is the leader of the Cowboys in
Yep.
real life. And of course, the movie Tombstone, we are perceived that, or we are led to
Definitely an
believe
underboss.
that Curly Bill, who real person from the Cowboys,
Yep.
he in Tombstone is the leader of the Cowboys, and Ike is kind of like Ike and Johnny Ringo are kind of like his one and
Lieutenants.
two, right?
Yeah.
But it was kind of the other way around. Johnny Ringo not And to my knowledge, I don't know if that was an actual person. I don't remember hearing his name in the docu-series, but Curly Bill very much was, and was Ike's like basically little lieutenant, like
Yeah.
right hand guy.
I like to
So kind
think,
of flip flopped those around.
yeah, I like to think maybe Ringo might have been a caricature or another like representation of a, for the film to be a
Yeah.
Western, but also to give a really good counter to Doc
Right.
Holliday.
Yeah. The mirror, the inversion of Doc Holliday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Best scenes in the whole movie, all three of them.
Love it. Literally my favorite scene is their kind of first confrontation.
The first one with the
where
cup.
where
Okay.
Ringo's like, twirling his pistol, and
Yeah.
Holiday's like barely can stand up and starts twirling the cup to mock him. Oh, I love that's such a great scene.
Yeah, I mean, all three of those scenes are kind of just like one in my mind. I think the when he comes off the porch and he doesn't really realize he's there, like that's just a great moment. And obviously, at the end when he's just kind of like, "Oh, Johnny Ringo, you look like someone just walked over your grave."
The strain was more than he could bear.
Wait, no Daisy.
Dude, oh my gosh, they did not have to give Doc Holliday like 300 classic one-liners in this movie. Like basically every line he says is like
Oh, it's all quotable.
poster board quote. Like it's amazing.
That's a heck of a thing for you to say to me. Why? I mean, even the whole like, shoot, I got a lot of friends. He's like, I don't. Like it's just, it never
so
ends.
sad. I was like, ow, that I can relate.
I don't.
I also love like I think his most savage line though was when I think it was Doc's like lying in bed and it's Wyatt and him kind of having their
Boring.
final exchange where
Revenge for what?
but yeah, basically Wyatt's like, I can't beat him, can I? And Doc's like, no. And he's like, oh, he's just so angry, basically. Why? Like what's he what's he trying to get out of life? And Doc's like, revenge. And Wyatt's like, revenge for what? He's like, being born. It's like, bro, dude, that is
But Val Kilmer's so
so
good because he's talking about himself in that scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything he says about Ringo, like Ringo and him are the same character. And he says that in the first time they meet when he's like, reminds me of
Yeah.
me. Now I know I hate him. Yeah, I definitely hate him.
Yeah, that's so true, dude. I honestly didn't even put that together. That's so good.
Oh
So
yeah.
good.
Excellent.
Man, oh dude. Maybe the greatest character in cinema history, Doc Holliday.
Easily.
I
But
will
yeah, Ike's the
say,
leader.
even though they flip flopped Ike and Curly Bill from movie to in real life, one thing that they nailed about Ike is his like genuine cowardice, and so maybe that's why they flopped, those two characters in the movie.
So
But yeah,
yeah.
like Ike basically running at every confrontation. That's how it actually happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's better for the movie, for Curly Bill to be like the main bad guy and have kind of a little bit more of the sinister look. Because Ike, both in the show and movie, don't look sinister. Like they're kind of just like chunky, like dupes. But like the fact that they kind of paired the apparently like true like walking on water moment, like they did it in the woods in the docu-series, but he was like they're in a creek, he was basically walking through the creek, but like couldn't get shot, like just gunned everybody down, can't get ambushed by Wyatt, or Wyatt can't get ambushed. But I think they needed Curly Bill to like be that sinister person in the movie to
Mhm.
kill and kind of have that turning of the tide in that
Yeah.
scene. um and it makes sense because I was confused when at the end of the series when they were like, they never finished it. Technically, both the movie and this is the same. The movie, Ike throws his sash and rides off and later gets killed for a completely unrelated reason. Same thing happened in real life. Like they never, like Ike left town, Wyatt left town, and that was the end of it. It never concluded.
He did actually go to California, like in the movie.
Yeah. So I thought, so that helped me because they finished, like, when they're in the series, when they were like, yeah, they never really finished it. And I'm like, what? The movie, like they murdered them all, but then like him and Doc shake hands because he threw a sash down and they're like, cool, we win. And I'm like, oh, okay. That checks out.
Yeah.
But before I watched the movie, I completely didn't even appreciate that they moved the cowboy characters around. I was just like, how is Ike the dude in the red shirt looking all sinister and
yeah.
Yeah,
and like as soon as I said his name, because it had been some time since I've last seen Tombstone, and when they like say Curly Bill, it's like, wait a second, what? But yeah, I think like all the cornerstone moments of like what actually happened, they did a pretty good job of in terms of accurately portraying those. I think the shootout was pretty accurate. Even Ike throwing his hands up, running at Wyatt, like running away, like that happened. Ike, straight up coward. I mean, I'm gonna say I wouldn't do the same thing if I was in a shootout. I wouldn't want to get shot either. But
the one thing that is different though in the fights is how it starts. Right now, I think the same cowboy drew first, right? But in the movie, he draws first because Doc's like winking at him and like
and
Doc has the
egging
look
it
of
on.
like I'm about to murder all of you. So like they're getting nervous because Doc Holliday's there.
Did someone in the movie come up and say that they were like coming to kill the Earps?
That was not Behan, it was the mayor in the movie that came up to them. But in the docu-series, was it Behan?
It was some random person in the town went up to Behan's like, hey, I overheard Ike over at the stable talking about how he wants to kill the Earps or whatever. And then Behan tells the Earps, and then the Earps go over there to like de-escalate, and then, well, at least that's what we're told. And then the shootout happens, and then the rest is history.
Which is crazy because the series
being able to say that because it literally is the rest is literally history.
Yeah, you're funny. But this docu-series is 6 episodes long. The gunfight happens like in episode 2.
Yeah,
which is crazy to me. Because the gunfight is halfway through, like almost exactly in the movie. So it's crazy because they get to the gunfight real quick because that's the kind of crux of it all. So I do feel like the movie gives a little bit more prelude, right? Maybe like why they came, the arrival, whereas the series is like, hey, here's the problem, here's the socioeconomic, international political stuff going on. Here's the gunfight. Now let's tell the story.
Well, I mean, because like the movie did a pretty good job in the early 90s of making the OK Corral a very popular moment in history. So like I feel like the docu-series is like, all right, everyone knows about the OK Corral. But here is like why it really mattered. But yeah, it's crazy. Like it almost sparked Civil War Part 2. Like
that's ridiculous.
First off,
by the way,
me a bad American. Dude. Great job narrating. So good. But yeah, I didn't even realize Chester Arthur was a president.
Right.
Like,
that was news.
They're like, President Arthur. I was like, what?
And they're just like, also, you might not have heard of him because he was the worst president ever in the history of everything. I'm like, damn. You not only surfaced the president, I probably only read their name like twice by looking at like the president chart in my life.
Yeah.
But you just doubled down and explained why. They're like, yeah, he's literally the worst president ever. I'm like, damn.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So now I know in modern day times, when everyone's calling whoever the worst president, I'm like, no, that's all lies. That's all fake news. Chester Arthur's the worst president. And I
Ed
thought that
Harris
was
told us. I
he
mean,
told us. Ed Harris tells me that's who the worst president was. Now
yeah.
it's even better though when you think about the logistics of like how he was managing this situation from his desk at the in Washington. So slow. Like he's like reading like letters and stuff and be like, oh,
Yeah.
what should I do about
Yeah.
this? I got
Basically,
JP Morgan yelling at me from over the ocean.
Dude, can we just talk about that for a second? I had to Google the transatlantic
Yes.
telegram line. They
Ain't that
freaking
cool?
built a telegram line under the Atlantic Ocean in the late 1800s. What?
Yeah, when you talk about like where we were at, like communication wise, like they
Yeah.
did that. So like they did that, it broke like within months, and then they did a new one that was in service for a long time.
How did they
Until
do that?
that's why I looked it up because I'm like, I never got to like the tangible like how they physically did that. I still need to figure that out because I want to see like
Yeah.
a Modern Marvels episode on that. I'm like, how in the 1800s did they lay a wire from freaking
From
Europe
America to
to
Europe?
America
Like, what?
so people can tap on either end of the line and like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, I see that and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, of course we could drill for oil and gas.
yeah. I'm about to go, today we're just gonna go live on Twitch to like literally anyone on the planet that wants to tune in. So
Yeah. Yeah, dude. But that part was probably
right.
the biggest shocker for me from the series.
It's like we
But
did
yeah, dude.
what?
Uh, and I don't know. Dad might edit this part out, but another thing that I was like, oh, that's a thing. I wonder if more people will ever learn this, or if this will be continued to just be buried in the annals of history. But believe it or not, the Democratic Party was the party of the South,
Yes.
and the Republicans were the party of the North.
Yep. Democrats wanted to preserve slavery, and the North was like, "No way, bro."
Who saw that coming?
I mean, if you know, you know. At this point, for some reason, it's like if you know, you know. It's that kind of situation. I don't know why. Like, it's not hard to figure out. It's pretty straightforward. There's
Yeah,
there's no smoke and mirrors behind it.
yeah. I don't know. I was like, oh wow. I wonder. I
And I
wonder
like
why
that.
more people don't know that.
And I like the ad in here where they're like the first Democrat to get elected since the Civil War. Right. We're
Mhm.
talking like 20, 30 years here, which is a lot of presidents. Like imagine today, like we've gone back and forth
Yeah,
every 4, 8
at
years.
least five to what 7 terms.
Right. So but the way they got the first Democrat in like 30 years in the White House is they picked a northern former Republican mayor who turned into a Democrat and then got elected. I'm like, huh, that's when like the Uniparty started.
Yeah, it's dang neocons.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway,
Anyways, so I don't know if that'll make the episode or not, but I found that to be super interesting.
fun fact.
Um, but yeah, I thought also too. Going back to Ike, being the cowboy that Wyatt caught at the train station, who was trying to assassinate them as they were leaving on the train. Was Ike there in the show? I know there was two
Yes.
cowboys, and he caught not Ike,
Correct. Yeah,
and
Ike was there in the show.
just straight up gunned him down. Oh, I guess now I'm talking about there were two in the movie, and he did
Yep.
shoot one, and then but he caught Ike and gave that absolutely like epic like, you wanted thunder, well you got it. You tell him I'm coming, and I'll bring it hell with me. Man, one of the best. I can't even say one-liners because it's like a paragraph, but it's
Yeah.
just like every time I hear that, I'm like, oh, I'm shaking in my boots over here.
But then there's this no, no, no.
Yeah, that part. I'm not gonna lie, that part was a little cheesy, but
Yeah.
that was funny. Oh man. Yeah, did anything stand out to you either from the docu-series or maybe like big differences between the two or even
No.
something from the two that they like absolutely nailed together?
So, back to the point of how like the gunfight is literally episode 2 of the show, right? And
Mhm.
they get into all that. And it's kind of like, what are they gonna do for the rest of the show, right? And this is where we kind of get you know, I think both the movie and the show do a good job covering the same amount of time. They just portray and fill in that time differently.
Mhm.
And they almost seem like they overlap nicely too. Because you get info from the movie that's not in the series. But the big thing I thought that was interesting was dragged on for um, like 2 episodes in the series is more of the details of how the actual post gunfight happened. So they still did
Yeah.
the whole parade, right? The paraded the bodies through the streets and called them murderers. So within like 24 hours, it went from like the Earps like saved the town and like did justice to they're murderers, right? So like that whole public
Yeah.
opinion thing,
They put
they dolled them
the
up.
dead cowboys in open face caskets in the middle of the town
Yeah,
and just hung like murdered signs on them.
right.
That's crazy.
And like that happens in both the show and the movie, but what they go into is the detail that the Earths, or at least Wyatt and Doc, actually go to jail and sit in jail and go to trial. And there's all those usual politics of like the jury is going to be, easily swayed in the local yokel town because I'm sure jury selection back then was fantastic um, in towns
Yeah.
like this. So and then they went into like the media frenzy about all of it, and I thought that was just really cool and that they spent that much time. What was a little drawn out, but it's just the way it happened, was just how much back and forth there was between like Doc, Wyatt, and like Ike. Like just like political maneuvering and just like the
Yeah.
town being split, and that goes on for weeks if not months, which I thought was really interesting before um it escalated
Yeah,
into
before
what
the whole like vendetta ride
the Vendetta
happened.
ride, which then they stretch out even more because the Vendetta ride is where we tie back to the JP Morgan thing. Because one of the most interesting things is that like Wells Fargo was like funding Wyatt's Vendetta ride to
This is
murder,
murder spree.
which by the end, if they're like, you know what, we kind of got to cut our losses here and like distance ourselves from you because it can't really
Yeah,
be
because you're an
public
outlaw
knowledge.
now.
Yeah. And it
We
can't be
can't be
public
supporting an
knowledge
outlaw.
that we're funding a murder campaign
Yeah.
as Wells Fargo. Sorry. So I thought that was
Yeah.
interesting. He was funded by them. He wasn't technically because like they're running around as marshals, right? He kind of in the movie he resurrects his marshal status and deputizes like his boys, which
Yeah.
is uber scary, but also super ultra touristic as a character. Whereas like in the show, they are just as much outlaws as the Cowboys, and even
Mhm.
less legitimate than the Cowboys because the whole Behan deputizing in a gang of cowboys, did happen. And they were literally kind of on the run in that situation. So like that was all just like wild. And that's really when the back and forth started in like the newspapers. And like that's when it became like a weekly, daily
Mhm.
update that like murder, 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 murder. Like Wyatt's just out here gunning people down.
Yeah. Yeah, and the whole thing that almost sparked like Civil War Part 2 was
Oh yeah.
Arthur sending in like the Rangers, which were like
Northern.
affiliated with the government, but not like the US Army,
Because
and
he
they were
couldn't
all
send the
northern.
army.
Yeah. Yeah, because that definitely would have escalated into part 2. But yeah, and they were comprised of mostly Northerners, and the Cowboys were mostly Southerners, and they're like, oh, the president's sending the Northerners
Don't
in to
tread
take
on
us
me.
Southerns out again.
Don't tread
Um,
on me.
yeah, so
That's why I wish
uh,
Chad was here because And I wish you have played more of Red Dead, because
Mm.
Red Dead, my favorite part about that game is that it does such a good job explaining the turn of the century when this old way of the West died
Mm.
and civilization finally made it there. The railways, law enforcement, and like the death of the West, right? This was kind of like when the West maybe peaked, for example. But like by 1900, like the West was basically dying. But it was because civilization came. And it's literally that notion of like, here comes big government telling me how to live my life. And the Cowboys, like that was kind of their whole shtick at least in the show, that was like the main, or in the movie, that was the main problem, is like, can't wear our guns in town. Who are you Nazis? Like before they were even nuts. Like
They took our guns.
they took our guns. Like we should be, you know what I mean? So like, but you think about it and it's like people go out there for freedom, but like no matter how far west they went, eventually here comes big gov like saying, oh, we can't carry our guns in town and can't get wasted and have a
Yeah.
shootout in the middle of the
Yeah.
night.
I think that, like, the Cowboy, come on, Billy, Ike, Johnny, you guys have just literally just been killing people in town with your guns.
Yeah.
Like, come on, let's just cut them some slack.
Yeah.
Maybe
right.
don't go around killing people.
And you know, that's where it starts, is where it's like, correct,
Yeah.
we are correcting poor behavior, uncivilized behavior, but it's like, but then we're on the spectrum where it's like we are correcting behavior and bringing civilization and stability where people can like walk about the streets and not worry about dying. But at the same time, it's like the fear though is relatable because it's like, when does it stop? Obviously, me being wasted at the saloon, being like, oh, I can't have a gun and just go shoot some
Can't go
stuff.
shoot the mayor
Like,
in
you
the
know,
middle of the street
that did
and then
happen. I
howl at
forgot
the
about that.
moon.
Yeah. But the premise is still there where they're like, they take our guns. When does it stop? And it's
Yeah.
like, when
Next
does
thing
it
you know,
stop?
we'll just Tombstone will be on a lockdown
Yep.
and have to get, a jab before they can reintegrate into society.
Yep.
Sure, that'll definitely get cut out of the episode.
So
Um,
I just find it interesting. Like Red Dead does a great job doing that. And even that's what reminded me about this too. Like in this show, when that came up, it's like, well, yeah, there's going to be some feelings about that because again, we have people that are out here because they want to be free, they want to make money, they want to be away from this stuff, but here it comes just like chirping away like,
Yeah.
and that's what Ike did, was he used that fear to like research that and be like,
Mhm.
they're going to send the army, here comes the north again, like that's never going to
Yeah.
end, like, so it makes sense how that it could easily spiral.
Mhm. I think even though Ike is a giant coward, one thing
Yes.
he was very, very good at was mass manipulation and being able to read the room and kind of have his way with people.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought his paranoia was interesting, like early on when he was like super paranoid of even about the own Cowboys, like what they thought of him and like if they
mhm.
thought um like he was still trying to be leader, right? And like a mob boss, you're kind of trying to protect your image at
Yeah,
the same time. So
yeah.
while that was cool. But yeah, he's very manipulative and definitely was, I mean, he's kind of a pioneer when it comes to like
In
playing the
more ways
crowd.
than one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like
I felt
marketing right there, man. Like, let's dress up the bodies in open casket and
yeah,
parade them through. Let's get public opinion here, people.
exactly. Um,
Cowboy marketing department,
I thought it
public
was
relations.
interesting. I wonder why they chose to use the red sashes instead of the snake skin around the cowboy hats. Probably logistically is easier to have like red sashes and more
Again,
noticeable.
I think it was a creative choice to make them more like clearly bad and
Yeah.
evil, right? Like red sash, like it stands out a lot and it's easy to identify in a movie
Mhm.
versus like, you're nudging your wife, like, see, he's got a snake skin, like, like him and shit, that what? Like,
Yeah, just
no, the
whatever
red
you
sash.
say, whatever you say, honey.
Yeah. It's more
Um,
palatable for a wide audience to be like,
yeah,
guys with the red things bad.
yes,
Got
yeah.
it. And the sharp looking dudes with the mustaches that are popular actors, good.
Oh man, I still can't get over Val Kilmer. Like Doc Holliday is
Legendary.
just so good. Um, but yeah,
Dude,
I mean,
the
even just
barber scene is just awesome, dude. He's like in his best dress, getting a shave. Ringo doesn't even know he's there, and he's
yeah,
like wasted, and he just steps off that porch. I'm
yeah,
your Huckleberry.
yeah. Uh, and then he just lays back down. He's like, "You can continue, sir.
Yeah,
You may proceed, sir."
and it's interesting because like they're not matches, but like Ringo portrays that he is better than Doc. Doc knows he's not. Ringo knows
Mhm.
he's also not. And I thought that was interesting, right? Like
Yeah,
Doc wins. Like Doc blasted him, dude, at the end, like headshot and then also like back in holster before like he even like begins the
yeah,
fall. Like,
yeah. And I love how he's just taunting him as he's like stumbling. He's like, "Come on, come
Daisy.
on."
Bear.
Yeah. Oh
So
man.
good.
But like even the character of Doc, like versus his actual person.
About the same.
Um, yeah, I mean, dying of tuberculosis, was drunk all the time and gambling all the time because he was prescribed whiskey as a medicine. But he was a good shot and did save Wyatt's life. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, that's how they met back in what Dodge City.
Yeah.
That's how their friendship started. But then he also helped him out in Tombstone here with this whole cowboy war. He was part of the shootout at the OK Corral. He had the shotgun at the OK Corral. Like he went
They'll be
on the
less jumpy
ride.
if he's on like I forget like the exact words, but basically why it was like they'll be less like jumpy if we give Doc the shotgun and he's not like might be pulling his pistols and like killing them all instantly. I don't know. Like that's what I got out of that. They're
Yeah.
like he's less intimidating if he's just holding the shotgun. But he walks around the corner in the movie and literally just shrugs off his
Yeah.
duster cloak. And it's just got it just pumps the shotgun. I'm like, okay, like that's
Gives him a little wink.
yeah, those guys don't think they're about to die. So
Yeah, exactly.
jeez.
Um, oh man, what else am I gonna say? There's been something on the tip of my tongue for like 10 minutes and it keeps
Doc's
slipping away.
characters. Doc in both the series and the
Yeah.
movie.
It'll pop up like in 20 minutes after we stop recording. So
Yep.
it'll be very helpful. Yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, what else is there to say?
I like the little bits in the show.
Oh,
Like I
here,
went to go, go, go,
back,
go, go.
it's back. I love how, of course, in the show we see that Behan does arrest Doc and Wyatt because of the amazing propaganda job that Ike and the Cowboys do after the shootout. But I love in the movie when Behan goes to arrest him, Wyatt's like, "I don't think you'll be arresting us today, Behan,"
Right.
and then just keeps like proceeds throughout his day.
And that's like the first half of the movie. I'm
I
like,
love it.
dude, like they totally church up Wyatt because everything he does is just like that generation of like dudes, like
Yeah,
epitome of like just
he's just a real dude.
yeah. Like I know my dad and all his friends, like they wanted to just be like Wyatt Earp.
Oh yeah,
It's just like they all rock stashes. Like my dad's always just had a mustache. Like I'm like, dude, I know. Like you guys, it's just that period of time. But like he's just had the one liners for days for
Mhm.
like the max like dude, the max dude, the max guy, the guy on the block, like the
Yeah.
guy.
Oh,
He even
dude, he
tells the
had
sheriff like
some.
you ain't arresting us today, buddy. It's
Yeah, I
like
gotta.
and he actually did arrest you, but whatever.
I had a list of like the best quotes I was going through. I know I typed a bunch of them to you, but um, I love.
The canoe.
Let's see, the canoe is great. Oh, in the Oriental, I believe, when I want to say it's Billy Bob Thornton's character. Maybe I'm misremembering, but he's like, "Go ahead, skin that that smoke wagon and see what happens." I'm like, what does that even mean? But it's amazing.
Wyatt just has like the best, like probably like his own combinations of slang, because he went from like Missouri to like Kansas to like Dodge City to Arizona,
Yeah,
Tombstone, and he's just like picked up the greatest like one-liners. And then now at this point in his career, they're like paragraphs of just awesomeness.
yeah. But yeah, that's what I've been like wanting to say, but kept forgetting. So continue on with whatever.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I thought was interesting is that his brother, Virgil,
Mhm.
in the show, like he's the one that's like, we're cops again, and we're gonna go and they're breaking the law. Old Sam Elliott there just laying down the stash. And Wyatt's like, nah, like we can't, like this is asking for
Yeah,
trouble. But in the series, like Wyatt's already like deputized, and he's like gonna go down there and bust up this bullshit.
yeah,
So I thought that was an interesting change, but that must have been because they were playing on the conflict and like again making Wyatt seem like so pure, where he was like, no, 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 I don't want to get into it. Gets into it, so it makes his like vengeance ride just way more
yeah.
okay.
I love how I see what you did there. It was okay.
Get it?
Yeah, I love in the movie before they go to confront them at the corral. He's like, guess you need to swear me in. Um,
You're already sworn in.
but yeah, in the series, we learned that Wyatt was just kind of a punk, like
Yeah,
loved confrontation and
right,
beat a lot of people up.
right. Just like
So
fisticuffs, just like
yeah,
slugging
he's just
people.
ready to fight at all times. So yeah, that's kind of like a big change. I mean, in the movie, Kurt Russell, I mean, he is aggressive,
Yeah,
but he tries to he's like reluctantly aggressive.
yeah.
But it seems like he
It,
was just a hyper aggressive dude in real life.
in the movie, like the way it's played up is that he's pushed there. It's not his fault he's behaving this
Yeah,
way. Whereas like in the show they clear that up, and it's like, he's kind of punk, and like he's kind of always around just laying down his own version of the law. And I like that, like in the series, like he legit had a case against him for murder, right?
hmm
And then literally when he's on his vendetta ride, he goes to the one in the ranch, in the scene where they go to that ranch, and he just straight up like duels the dude, but just like also kind of just murders him because the dude had no chance. Or did he even have a gun? I think he gave him a gun, but he is out there legitimately just committing murder, right? And they do a better job in the show, obviously highlighting how equal these two sides of the fence are.
yeah.
Whereas in the show, like there's just an awesome montage of them just gunning down like probably 50 people. No big deal.
Yeah,
They're the bad guys.
exactly. Yeah, I guess obviously we love Tombstone. Um, I'll watch it anytime it's on TV. If anyone ever comes up to me and is like, "Hey, Mike, you want to go watch Tombstone?" Yes, I'll drop whatever I'm doing and immediately go watch Tombstone. But it is nice to have the show to kind of balance out, like we've been talking, just like kind of who these people really were and how it really played out and the reasons why it actually played out the way it did. And when you get through what 6 episodes for the docu-series,
Yep.
it's a really fascinating ride, and you'll actually learn something that's very interesting. And if there's one thing that I've learned this year, it's that history is awesome, and we should learn about it more because it's cool to see where you come from to help prevent you from going where you could be going. I don't know. I probably could have said that in a better way, but
I just like that you're probably saying that for the first year in your 30 plus years of life. Like, takes people that long sometimes, or never.
yeah.
So I'm glad you feel that way about
Yeah,
history.
no, history is awesome. And thank you for not saying my actual age on there. I appreciate that.
We're all 30 plus years of age at this point.
Now, Dad,
Some of
he's
us more than others. Not you,
45
Mike.
plus, but
45 plus. Brutal. Dad literally comes back for like moments.
Okay, so
moments into an age roast.
People tuning in, Dad usually hangs out behind the scenes and like provides us with information or makes notes of edits and things like that. But tonight he was in, and then he had to step away and literally just came back to me calling him 45 plus. So what's up, Dad?
Hi.
All right, I'm gonna banish you to the Shadow Realm. All right, well, hey, I think both of us would highly recommend Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy War. You should definitely watch it and then immediately watch Tombstone.
Have to.
Yeah. And I'm excited for next week, episode 200. Gonna have one episode, hopefully. Wild that we have 200 numbered episodes, but we've kind of talked. If we're counting all the companion series and all the
we're like 300
stuff, way more than 200. Yeah, still 200. It's a big number of episodes in this for quite some time. But yeah, I'm excited for Chad to come on because I want to hear his thoughts. Well, we should give him like 10 15 minutes next episode to just get out all those Cowboy feelings and thoughts that he has bottled up inside tonight. Yeah. Subscribe. Go check out Pokey Boys. Go subscribe over there. Demon Slayer companion series just ended. Got a month-long slate of traditional Showboys episodes. We're going to be covering Koromon, which is going to be super fun. Got Nick to play his first Pokemon-like game. Ugly Kid Joe Cross will be joining us for that. Dad and Chad are going to be talking about Alien Romulus. That's going to be crazy. And then, of course, we have our 200th episode. And then November, it's Arcane season. So exciting stuff coming up. Make sure you subscribe. Head over to patreon.com/showboyspodcast. If you want to support us, that would be amazing. And check out showboysmedia.com, our website. We have been trying to utilize the blog posts lately, so go check those out. And you can find everything else Showboys related there. We even have a merch shop. You can pick up some Showboys hoodies and shirts and all that fun stuff. Anything else to say, Nick, before we jump out of here?
Today I've learned that my wife doesn't know if she's seen Ace Ventura or Tombstone. That's all.
I have no words.
We had company over and they made reference to Ace Ventura, and I was like, "Have you seen that?" She's like, I'm like, "You haven't seen it."
Oh my gosh, that needs to be fixed.
I know.
That would be so good, dude. It's so funny. All right. Well, see you guys.
Sorry for that low note.
Way to really end on a downer there.
But has she seen Dumb and Dumber?
Probably not. I don't know what she did as an adolescent, honestly. Like art and like got good grades, I guess.
Sewing and
art and
doing
good grades.
Responsible things.
Yeah, she can do all those things, but like she ain't. I say Tombstone. She's like, she doesn't know what that is. I'm like, the greatest movie of all time.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, okay.